You know, I love coming into this place during the week when it's quiet and you can just sit in the presence of God. It feels, I don't know, it just feels like God's presence is in this place. And when it's quiet and you look around and you see the images that are around us, it's just a wonderful place to be. But you know, I also like coming here when it's full. I think about some of our Easter Sundays or our Christmas Eve services, that this place was completely packed with people. And I realized that we have been without that for 2 years. It's been 2 years since we've really had everyone here, and it's just filled the place. And it's hard, and it's sad, and yet now we're in this place where we're beginning to come out of these 2 years of pandemic, and we're beginning to see people coming back to the church in person, and yet at the same time, it's different. I mean, folks aren't flooding back like a lot of folks thought they would. It's interesting because I've really read quite a few articles during this time, and one author in particular keeps saying, you know, if we expect that it's going to be like it was before, it's certainly not going to be that way. But one of the things that he wrote was kind of disturbing. Because while I see all the opportunities that are now before us as a church, and I'm not just talking about our particular church, by the way, this is really, we're talking universal church, the church of Jesus Christ found everywhere. As I look at this, I know there's great opportunity for us to embrace some of the new things that God has shown us during this time. But this article that he wrote was fairly disturbing, because one of the things that he said is, there seems to be, if you look at surveys, there seems to be a growing indifference to re-engaging in the church. It may not be so much re-engaging in faith, but he said even some of that is happening as well. People just have kind of gone on with their lives for these past 2 years, and they've grown indifferent. And you know, I looked at that word and I read it over, and I thought again, indifference. Is there this sense of growing indifference? And what does it mean that for many people, they have grown indifferent to something that used to occupy every week, at least one time a week, that it used to occupy so much of who they were? And I wondered, is he right? Is there a growing indifference within the church, big C? And it made me think about this passage that comes from Revelation. And towards, it's actually right in the beginning of Revelation, or pretty close to the beginning, there's a place in the letter where 7 churches are named, and each of these 7 churches have issues of good as well as places of struggle. And so there's an encouragement here, as in this letter, this image that's being portrayed of how an angel comes to each of these churches, and how the angel of this church says this, and there's a message that's given. Well, the last one is the church in Laodicea. And this is what a part of that message is from the angel in that church. It says this, and this is Revelations chapter 3 at verse 14. And to the angel of the church in Laodicea write, the words of the Amen and the faithful and the true witness, the origin of God's creation. I know your works. You are neither hot nor cold. I wish that you were either hot or cold. So because you are lukewarm and neither hot or cold, I am about to spit you out of my mouth. For you say, I am rich, I have prosperity, I need nothing. You do not realize that you are wretched, pitiable, poor, blind, and naked. That's a harsh word. I mean, that is a harsh word. And I remember the first time I read that, it was a very personal word to me, because I thought to myself personally, am I hot or cold when it comes to my faith, or am I lukewarm? And I remember when I was newer to the faith, I mean, there was a great fear that I was lukewarm. And I read this thing about God wanting to spit me out of his mouth. And I thought to myself, wow, I certainly don't want to be lukewarm. But now, it's still perhaps at times where I struggle with that personally, but now I think that has been a declaration of what's happening within the church, Big C. And people are becoming lukewarm as to whether or not this is a good place for us to be, and whether or not gathering as a community is a good thing for us to do. And you know, as we move forward, I know we're going to continue to do our live streaming. We're going to continue as long as we can to do these kinds of devotionals to reach out to people, because I know that having that time on your own and really reflecting and being quiet on your own is so important. But I also recognize that the in-person thing is so important. So we're trying to figure out that balance, I think, in our life. All of us are trying to figure out that balance. What's necessary now? What's unnecessary now in our lives? We're trying to figure it all out. But oh man, my hope and prayer is that we never allow our faith and our response to the church and our connection with the church to be something that becomes lukewarm, neither hot or cold, something that we become indifferent about. And so really, you know, today, that is probably one of my greatest prayers, is that the author of this article was wrong, because the resilience and the desire of God's people is going to continue to grow. And that we know that we cannot be indifferent about who we see ourselves as the Church of Jesus Christ. So I personally find that I have to grow in my faith in this way, to not allow indifference towards all the many things that I've experienced in my many lives of being a part of the church. I have to be careful that I do not allow indifference to sink in there, so that I become lukewarm, neither hot or cold. Together, perhaps we need to find a way to turn around what some are calling the indifference of those who used to be a part of the church. I am so proud of what this church is doing, and I am so excited to see all the ways that we are growing and the potential for our growth. But let us also be on guard that we do not allow indifference to creep in. Thank you all.